my name is Jillian Heiler, and I'm with the Washington State University Environmental Science Club, and today I'm here talking to Dr. William Schlosser.
Good afternoon, but don't call me Dr. William Schlosser, okay? I'm Dr. Bill.
Right.
Call me Dr. Bill, and it flows off the tongue a lot easier than Schlosser. What a name. Yeah.
All right.
There you go.
So, Dr. Bill, how long have you been here in Pullman?
Well, really here in Pullman since the late 80s, but that's when I first came here as a student. In forestry, I had a background, I already had a degree in geology from junior college. Came here as a moving along student in forestry and range management. And from there, that was, 87, turned that into a bachelor's of forest management, forest and range management. Then pushed that through to a master's in natural resource economics. And that was my time first here at WSU, and then years later I came back after doing some work overseas, working in the industry of Idaho, Washington, around the Pacific Northwest, and got my doctorate in environmental science and regional planning, again right here at WSU. So I was able to pick up literally 3 degrees right here. I was on faculty for different times during those periods, but then just rejoined faculty spring semester 19 to teach natural resource ecology, and having a super great fun time doing that and really enjoying it.
Okay, that's awesome. What were you doing before you came back here?
Well, immediately before, lots of hats, right? But I had been on faculty with the University of Idaho. And then from there, went to Michigan State University and was working in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And that's when I got a call from Secretary of State Warren Christopher asking me if I would lead a project in the Russian Federation. It was after the fall of the former Soviet Union that we had a USAID project get started up there. So I had been a consultant on that project for several trips before that while I was still at the U of I. And then I took his challenge and moved to the Russian Federation to a city of Khabarovsk. And I didn't speak a stitch of good Russian and had a great staff of, they were mainly Russian nationals who were also mostly bilingual. And their language was superior. Fantastic. They got English, they could interact really well. But we hosted a lot of consultants from the US, some from the WSU, from different campuses around the West. Brought them in as consultants on that project, and I stayed there for 6 years, working for the USAID, Secretary of State, doing different environmental policy and technology projects. Did a lot of interactions with indigenous peoples, with the Russian nationals who really had progressed through great education. They really got it, but they didn't have any of the technologies we have. The things that we were able to really expand what we know from ecology, from forestry and natural resources, everything from Siberian tiger reclamation. They have these huge, we talk about cougars, the big cats, right? These cougars are monstrous, holy buckets. They're fun to work with from a distance. Okay. Yeah, now that's better. And that distance was to look at what they need in their environment, their habitats, the whole ecosystem management, what they eat, how they eat, and on like that. But it wasn't just Siberian tiger. It was going back to the basics of something like seed breeding centers, how to raise seedlings in a greenhouse instead of just throwing out seed to the forest lands after a harvest or a fire or something else like that. So that's one of the biggest projects we kicked up under that guise of Environmental Policy Technology Project, building greenhouses, educating folks how to do the seed culture, cleaning, storage, building walk-in freezers and coolers with diesel generators that would kick on when the power went off, which was always. And after about the second year, I knew it had been adopted in a broad way because walked into the freezer unit and man, oh man, here are all the seeds put into storage, good temperature, and right over there's some elk and there's some deer and the moose. And yeah, folks were using it. They understood the need to keep it active. But I digress. That was my time in the Russian Federation. Also, at the end of that project, I took a job as a CEO and general director of a harvesting operation. It was a joint venture between a U.S. side and the Russian side. Came together to do the harvesting. Built our seaport where a river ocean vessel could be loaded. We could do it a boat every 3 days to put those logs on that float down to Japan and into South Korea, where the buyers were able to mill it up and use the very unique species we had there, which was use the Korean pine trees that we sold them, as well as some large and other species that they were able to cut into lumber. Truly successful, and that was a really good operation right up until the late 90s when the Asian market crashed and a whole bunch of recession went in that area. But that was also the end of my stay in the Russian Federation when I moved back to the US and started that doctorate I told you about, using the data I collected while I was in Russia.
Okay.
Yeah, long story, right?
Yeah. So that's what your research has been in the past. Do you have any future projects or business ventures that you're thinking about getting into pretty soon here in the future?
Well, there's one that I've been working on most of my life, but little pauses here along the way. About 10 years ago, I started to develop into a new aspect of research, looking at what I call the Forest Resource Analysis System software. Okay, there's software is in there, so we're talking about something that's online. But that is to put into an exclamation point of it, really the look at the environment to say, what is it capable of growing? What kind of plant species, trees, precipitation, what's growing there now? How about all the things that are integrated from that, like water movement through the ecosystem, through the streams, through those riparian zones, really pushing that out further. So that was the big look at tying these things together. How do we get those data? Okay, we do a lot with GIS, right? The Geographic Information Systems, but through that we can do remote sensing from airplane, from drones, from satellites. And what we have available today is huge. It gives us so much more of a broader aspect on understanding really what's happening there. So I take that part of it, tied in with biometrics. That is our ability to predict how the forest ecosystem is growing. Not just the trees, but how about the density, that interaction between different species and the wildlife that use it. Wow, we now have a much broader view of not only that old growth Douglas fir forest, but how about the spotted owl habitat that is created there, or the conduits between different patches. Okay, those corridors for the spotted owl, how do they get from here to there? Those metapopulations, great. But we can do that much better today because we have that growth and yield side of it, that forest biometrics, tied in with better projections about how they grow, where they're located through time. So that whole temporal spatial scale thing. Okay, well, what's so different about it, the way I'm doing it though, is I brought in natural resource economics to it. Let's put a better exclamation point on harvest timing of the timber species. Not only when's the financially optimal time to harvest timber, but what about the carbon sequestered in those stems? How much carbon are we growing? What is the accumulation of that carbon through time if we harvest it now or in 20 years or 50? And then the conversion of that carbon in the tree boles into lumber. Because as a tree bole, it might burn down and be released back to the atmosphere. If we cut it into lumber, well, the half-life of that is about 100 years. Well, you just extended the stored carbon in a stable format for a longer period. Okay, so there's different aspects to look at it, but that whole FRAS program, okay, there's a joke on that one. FRAS, do you know what FRAS is?
No.
That is the little sawdust that bark beetles kick out behind them when they bore into the tree. FRAS. Okay, now I just made the acronym into FRAS as a little bit of a Dr. Bill humor. Dry humor, I know. That software program then is tying all these things together. That's what I started putting online. Doing the programming for that as a secure online service, SQL databases, and oh golly, all the different security programming to keep that up for clients. I think that client might be a tribe, it might be a county or a state or a company. Okay, and that puts a better exclamation point on what the value of the forest land is through time. Okay, that value, yeah, is super important. If you're the one paying taxes on the land, you gotta figure out what's my cash flow from all my ownership holdings. So it's not treating it as a monoculture, it's looking through time, how you able to really pull them all together. That, for the Dr. Bill super dry humor, that's super fun for me. I love doing that kind of work and seeing how we do things like make predictions about prices. It's like the biometrics making a prediction about how fast it's going to grow, the density, and what species on on every site exclusively. Yeah, that all comes together. It's super
Very
fun.
interesting.
Boring as can be, right? Yeah. No, that's kind of the fun. We get to do a bunch of different stuff in natural resources. This is part of it.
Okay, one last question. So, is there anything you would want to let somebody who's taking your class in the future know about what to expect?
Expect Dr. Bill to repeat it like 1,000 times to define, discuss with example. Okay, and that's totally what I do in the classroom. When you do an essay question, that essay question isn't a one-sentence blurb, I want just the facts. Ramble on about it, tie in different aspects. This is related to that, it's related to that. And talk about those interactions. Give example of it. Define, discuss, and you can do that in natural resource ecology. Do it in economics. Do it in any class you've got. It's going to work for you. You'll love the results. So that's the message I give my students a lot. I give them a lot of opportunity to succeed. I want to see them succeed. Everybody, come on, you're spending your super scarce resource of your time to take my class. Okay, put it to the best use. No sleeping through class. Somebody once said, if you sleep through this, you're a zombie. Yeah, you got the idea. Bring it on and really get a kick out of it.
Okay.
Enjoy.
All right. Thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, you know it.
It was a pleasure. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right.